Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of Learn by the Nuggets, Gaia Asia Pacific's webinar series. The Global Alliance for Instrumental Alternatives is a global alliance of over 800 organizations in over 90 countries that have been working for a just, waste-free world for nearly 20 years now. To all those who are following a live stream via Facebook and YouTube, hello and good afternoon. And for those watching this replay, good morning, good evening, wherever you are at this time. My name is Froilan Grate, and I am the Executive Director of Gaia Philippines and the Asia Pacific Coordinator for Gaia, currently based in Manila, and I have the pleasure of being your host for today. The webinar is part of Learn by the Nuggets, a regular webinar series organized by Gaia Asia Pacific, attended by Gaia members across the region, and in some cases, like today, is open to the public. The webinar has served as a venue for discussion of various topics pertinent to the work of Gaia and our members. This webinar is being streamed live on our Facebook and YouTube accounts, where people may post questions and comments, and we'll get through them during the Q&A portion. In today's episode of our webinar series, we are launching our latest publication, Business Unusual: Enterprises Paving the Way to Zero Waste. The publication features heartwarming stories about 21 zero waste stores across Asia Pacific. It is inspired by our campaign to promote and sustain zero waste systems by putting the spotlight on zero waste enterprises in the region to promote sustainable solutions to the global plastic and waste crisis. We hope that by sharing these stories, we will inspire more development organizations, local governments, impact investors, and financing institutions to develop portfolios for zero waste initiatives. And hopefully, we'll get to inspire the public to support these local businesses. For today's webinar, we'll hear about the report and the 21 stories featured in it, as well as hear directly from the people behind 3 of those zero waste stores. Before we dive in, a couple of points on logistics. This webinar will last for 1.5 hours. Please feel free to use the comment section, both on YouTube and Facebook, to send your questions and your comments. We'll try to accommodate them all depending on the time we have and the number of questions that we receive. In case you won't be able to accommodate all questions in the live discussion, we'll answer them in the comments after. A quick overview of what's going to happen in the next 1 hour and a half. First, we'll hear from our 4 speakers who will each take a turn to introduce what they've been doing and give the context of their social enterprise or their zero waste business. And then after each one of them has spoken, we'll go straight to a mini talk show and a question and answer section after. To tell us more about the report and give us an overview of the businesses and social enterprises featured in the report, we have the managing editor of the Business Unusual: Enterprises Paving the Way to Zero Waste, Sharma Binosa. Sharma is a fictionist, translator, and animal welfare advocate. She is the founder of This Way Instead, an advocacy page that features heartwarming stories of ordinary people making the world a better place and presents a different way of seeing and doing. She is also the Knowledge Management Officer of Gaia Asia Pacific. So Sharma, welcome to the webinar. We're having some technical issues. Sharma just got disconnected. No matter how much you prepare, things like this happen. So hopefully Sharma is able to join us in a while. So Sharma will be telling us about the 21 stories. But while waiting for Sharma, let's go with our second speaker who would tell us about their specific business enterprise. So to hear straight from one of the stories featured in the report, we have our next speaker all the way from Vietnam. Alison Batchelor is the founder and owner of Refillables Hoi An, Central Vietnam's first minimal waste shop established in December 2018. In spite of the shop's continued success, Allison is now adding to her Refill resume as the founding member of a new venture, Refill Day, and hopes to utilize her experience and knowledge to further expand the refill concept to smaller communities and neighborhoods all over Vietnam. Hello,
Hi.
Allison, and welcome. Can
Hi
you
there.
tell us about Refillables Hoi An and what inspired you to start it?
First of all, thank you so much for including me in this. I feel very honored to be able to share my story at such a wider platform. Yeah, the idea came about just under 3 years ago. My daughter had returned to school, or had actually started school, and so I found myself with some time on my hands, and I needed to figure out some kind of job. And while I thought it would be something online, just for sake of ease, it wasn't a very inspiring way of living for me. I really enjoy interacting with people. So curiously enough, I'd had a friend visit, and while she was here, I took her to a hair salon supply store of all places because she wanted to just get some hair products. And while I was there, she said she saw a 1 liter bottle of hand soap, and she had said to me, "Oh, you should get this. You have a child. You probably go through a lot of hand soap." And I said, "Oh, yeah, I'm not really in the mood to buy it right now." So I didn't buy it, and fast forward 1 month later, and I ran out of hand soap, and I thought, "Oh, I should have gotten that 1 liter bottle of soap." So I went back to the hair salon supply store, and I said to the woman, "Oh, do you have that 1 liter bottle? I just want a big soap." And she said, "No, we sold out of it." And I said, "Oh, okay, well, yeah, I really wanted that soap." And she said, "Oh, well, I supply soap to the hair salon. So if you like, I could fill you a 1 liter bottle of hand soap." And the moment she said that, all that went through my head was, for 2.5 years, I've been living in Vietnam, and I could have been coming and refilling my hand soap. All I could think was that this is one more container that I could have, diverted from landfill if I had known this. So, she went in the back, she got me a bottle and filled it and brought it out to me. And then all the way home, carrying this 1 liter bottle, all I could think was, that's what I could do. I could do that. I could open a refill shop. And so literally from that moment forward, there wasn't a shadow of a doubt in my brain that that's what I wanted to do. And it didn't matter that I was living in Vietnam, and it didn't matter that I didn't speak the language. But it was just something I really wanted to do. I've always been super passionate about the environment. I've used a lot of eco-friendly products. And actually, 11 years ago, friends of mine in Vancouver, Canada, opened up an amazing refill shop called the Soap Dispensary. And I had started shopping there to support them. And at the time was selling an eco-friendly detergent alternative. So I had already started my journey to this point, 10 years ago. So opening this shop, even though I'd never run a shop, drawing on that experience, I knew it was exactly what I wanted to do. So from that point on, I just really set my mind to sourcing products. There is a lot available in Vietnam, actually, but because it's such a big country, there's not necessarily a lot of communication from the north to the central to the south. I feel like Saigon and Hanoi are such big cities, they act very independently, so they don't really need to look outside of their city for things. Whereas I'm in Hoi An, it's a small town in central Vietnam. So it's definitely a little bit more challenging trying to source things. And again, because I don't speak Vietnamese, that became a little bit challenging, but it wasn't anything that I couldn't surpass. Like there's definitely ways around, not speaking the language. And eventually, of course, that was bringing in an assistant. So approximately 6-7 months after I got my initial idea, I was finally ready to open the doors to my little shop. We actually put it in the front of our house. I had wanted a different location, but they all fell through. So eventually my husband had said to me, well, let's just do it like the Vietnamese do it. Let's just put it in the front of our house. We don't necessarily need that living space downstairs. We can move upstairs. And so we did that, and, putting everything together for the shop. We did what we could to we see people throw things away on the side of the road, furniture, and we'd drive by on our motorbike and scoop up whatever we could with the vision of really repurposing materials as much as we can, and revisioning them into tables, even if if it was a bench before, it could be a table now. So then when we opened in December 2018, we had 17 refillable items. I was starting with home care and personal care products. So things like dish soap, detergent, floor cleaner, shampoo. So just things that had a long shelf life, things that people could use on a regular basis. Here in Vietnam, a lot of people can buy things by weight, things like rice and beans. People already are doing that. But utilizing refills for personal care and home care products is something they weren't doing. So that's something that I really wanted to focus on. So like I said at the beginning, we started with 17 products for refill. And now we're just over 2 years in, and we have close to 140 products. So I have transitioned into bringing in a lot more food. In the summer months, I realized if I really wanted this business to continue to grow and thrive, which it was, I really needed to start introducing more consumable products to really bring customers regularly into the shop. So where we started out with maybe having people refill 3 to 6 items, now we have people come in and refill 6 to 12 items. In our first year, I think we were at approximately just under 5,000 refills, so 5,000 containers diverted from landfill. And at this point, just over a year from that time, we're now at over 12,500 containers that have been diverted from landfill. So it's definitely making an impact here where it's so necessary, where our landfills are overflowing. So it's really been amazing. It's been a really amazing journey. And in spite of the fact that it is, pandemic times, I feel so incredibly blessed to say that the business is absolutely thriving. We haven't seen a dip. If anything, our sales have increased. If anything, people have been more cognizant and more driven to refill and explore that side of life here. I also think that the concept lends very well to a time where people are financially strapped. They don't have as much money, depending on what type of work they've had. If it's tourism driven, maybe they've lost their jobs because of, lack of people. But when people can go into a shop and literally buy what they can afford, then it really allows them to have more flexibility with their income and, not really live without as much as they thought they would have to. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Alison. I love the story how from being a consumer who had no option, it inspired you to start this Refillables Hoi An. And aside from the amazing work that our friends from Vietnam Zero Waste Alliance are doing in Vietnam, I think Refillables Hoi An is another reason to visit Hoi An in Vietnam once we're able to travel. So we're excited to hear more about your experience later in our Q&A.
Great.
Thank you again. So Sharma is here, and Sharma would like to go next to you. And to start off, Sharma, if you could tell us how was the experience of gathering those 21 stories for you and editing those stories, and what was the one realization that you have from that process?
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to our listeners and to my fellow speakers, and also good morning to those who are in South Asia. Thank you so much for the question, Roy. It's overwhelming. I have to say that I'm very thankful to have been trusted to do this project. It was eye-opening for me, and When we started, I wasn't sure what kind of stories we'll be getting. We felt like we might be getting these same stories of zero waste stores. Before that, we knew or we felt that zero waste stores are actually um, a niche. And when we started looking at the stories, it's not that well, it's not that. There's a different story. So what we did was look at all the other zero waste stores that are happening in Asia. So we did crowdsourcing through our social media accounts. We did some desk research. We also worked with our members. We checked with them if they have zero waste stores in their countries that they could recommend. And since there are already a lot of zero waste stores in Asia Pacific, we also had a hard time choosing which ones to invite and which ones to feature in the publication. In the end, I feel like we were able to get the great stories. Of course, we wanted to feature more, but then, as you know, our timeline was also short, and some of those that we invited to be part of the publication did not make it. So it's overwhelming. At the same time, it's eye opening. I really learned a lot from this, and it's also heartwarming. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharma. Now we're excited for you to tell us about those 21 stories. So take it away.
Thank you, Froy. So, business unusual enterprises paving the way to zero waste. That's the title of the publication, and as mentioned, there are already 21 stories in here. So 21 enterprises across Asia Pacific, and if you've seen the publication, these are by individuals, by organizations that are working on related issues, like for example organics management, working with farmers, working on other issues as well. And some are owned by families, so these are not big corporations, these are small social enterprises. Some of them are app based, some are online, they use social media, and some are some have physical stores and also utilize online or the social media for their business. Some are into food business, some are into delivery, some are into hygiene, product and personal care. Some manufacture these, some just sell them, and there are also a lot that are focused on selling household basic necessities. And as I mentioned, some of them, especially those that are organized or owned by organizations, are tied with other causes as well. Some on veganism, some on organic farming and organic waste management, and some are also into farmers and indigenous peoples. These organizations that are helping these farmers and indigenous peoples. But all of them, they're all plastic free, and only because they just by implementing either traditional or revolutionized refill and return deposit systems. So one thing that I've seen about these zero waste stores is that there are a lot of phases of refill and return deposit. It's just not one. There's not just one way to do this, and it's so exciting. So here are the 21 stories, the zero waste enterprises. First is Sharesa. Sharesa is involved, is an organization actually that's involved with farmers. They have a very holistic way of doing. Um, they they initially just started with helping with the farmers, helping them set up their systems, and then taught them how to do things zero waste. The owner of Sharesa, her father, used to work for a time doing garbage collection, and so when she was growing up, she was also picking waste on her own because she what this practice was instilled in her. And so when she started with her enterprise, she made sure that zero waste will be part of the system. It's holistic because from the start, from where they are they the agricultural practices, when they buy the products, they are buying the products from the farmers using fair prices, and then when they are selling the products to the city in the city, they are also using zero waste. Everything in their operations is zero waste. So it's really holistic. Bear Pack, Bear Pack is an app-based enterprise, but I will not speak. Uh, I will not share a lot about Bear Pack because one of our speakers is Roxanne, who will be talking about it more. Next is Amgu. Amgu is a pioneer zero waste store in central Philippines, and they also sell basic commodities. And what's important is that in their operations, they also make sure that they educate the community. When they started being pioneer, the community didn't know much about zero waste, and so they made sure to educate their community. And now the community are um, more informed about zero waste systems. Slowwood is also a one-stop shop. They sell basic commodities and also hygiene products. They are based in Hong Kong. And what's inspiring about this is that the proprietors started it based on they were inspired by their trip in Sydney, and they saw how the stores that they visited, they do zero waste and sustainable systems. And so when they got back to their country, they started looking at zero sustainable stores as well, and they realized that these are not available in just one shop in the city, and so they decided to be a one-stop shop for sustainable products in Hong Kong. And Wala Usik is also another one-stop shop. It's if you know well, at least in Asia Pacific, in developing countries, we have these neighborhood stores. They sell the basic commodities, and the typical ones are actually where you buy products in sachet. Wala Usik is like a reimagination of these sari-sari or neighborhood stores. You can also buy basic necessities from them, refill, but without plastics because they are well refilled, and people are also inspired to bring their own packaging. Bring Me Home is an app-based um, store in Australia. They actually linked uh, restaurants with surplus food to people who are looking for food at the end of the day. So these surplus food are sold at big discounts, like 30 to 70% discounts, and at the same time, so they were able to rescue food, and at the same time, they increased the food traffic on those times when there should be less people in the stores. During the pandemic, their operations changed because they realized that there were less people going to the restaurants, but then they noticed that the food wastage was happening upstream with the farmers. And so they moved their operations upstream as well. And so they were able to rescue food from the farmers from going to the bin. So that's how they tried to be responsive to the pandemic. Wana Zero is just like Wala Usik. They are also a one-stop shop um, store, neighborhood store. They target communities. They are also, unlike the earlier stores that are niche, these are also affordably priced. Their first consumers were the waste workers because this store is owned by Mother Earth Foundation. This is an organization that works with waste workers, and they are helping communities and local governments establish zero waste systems. And so they realized that zero waste is one of the ways, zero waste stores is one of the ways in which communities can prevent the proliferation of and the use of sachets. So they set it up, and it's working very well in communities. Hona Zero also responds to, they also have some program where the proceeds of the store are used are used to fund the scholarships of the waste workers. So these are also amazing things that they do. 7 to 9 Green Store is owned by an aeronautical engineer who left his job to set up zero waste. So initially, their family store was not zero waste, but then he was inspired by when he traveled to another country and he saw that this country has these sustainable stores, and he thought that he should start the same in his hometown. And when he got back, he left his job and set up zero waste store. And now he told us that they have avoided lots of plastic. They have also developed brand unbranded products that are even better from the branded ones. And now the preferred products of the community, and also the community has learned about zero waste because the people or the educated members of the community have been seen to be patronizing the store and even bringing their own containers, and the other people started to be inspired with that and also try to do what these educated people have been doing. So lots of inspiration there as well. Old Manila Eco Market is a pop-up store. They are the ones that you see when you visit one of the tourist sites in Manila when you are in Intramuros. They set up um, stores, but the sellers can only join them if they commit to zero waste practices. They cannot use packaging, and they can only sell organic or sustainable products. And now they're also started operating again because the city has started opening the city for tourism as well. So now we can visit them if you have time. Green Care is another store. It's a pioneer store in Sri Lanka. Amazing about this it was started right after the trash lied in Sri Lanka in 2017. The proprietor was shocked at uh, how big the problem was, and she realized how. She said was, so what she did was start this, and also her family is into organic farming, and so their products are organics and at the same time zero waste. They also don't use plastic, and they um, encourage refill and people to bring their own reusable products. Working mom, it's a solopreneur, or it's a mom who is producing reusable sanitary napkins, and it's one of the amazing things that we featured because sanitary napkins is also a big problem, environmental problem. And during the pandemic, what's amazing about them is that they also started producing reusable face masks. NUDE in Malaysia is also a one-stop shop for sustainable products. And like the others, they also made sure that they are able to um, educate their community about zero waste practices, because just like some of the others that we featured, they are also among the pioneers in their community. And when they started, the people didn't know much about zero waste. Lipay Mundo is the same with Dumaguete. Um, it's also a one-stop shop for household products and even basic commodities and food that you cannot just easily find elsewhere. They also encourage bring your own containers, and also they are plastic free, and they also educate the people in the community. Talk Organis is going to be presented today, so I won't be talking much about this. But this was established by a member of Gaia. This is also an organization-based enterprise. YPB. It's by YPBB. Craft Bulk Store is the good thing about craft bulk store is that they are into veganism. So this started when the proprietor visited another country. I think it was in uh, um, New Zealand, and they saw how it works there, and she realized that the vegan store or vegan restaurant which she owned was not zero waste. And so when she came back in the country, she just made sure that one, she come up with a zero waste store, and she makes sure that she merges it with her vegan lifestyle. So this is vegan zero waste lifestyle. Gotthard Sharp is also another one-stop shop for basic commodities. Again, you can do refill and recycle, and also they have also been making sure to educate their community about their enterprise. And Gotthard is also like Sharesa, they also work with farmers and indigenous people. So they were helping them in their agricultural practices, but then they realized that the best way to help these farmers is to actually sell their products at fair price. So that's how they have been helping the farmers. I don't know how to pronounce this, but I'm just pronouncing it as Henbu for now. They are they are an enterprise that are making a lot of they are making a lot of models. So if you are interested in coming up with a zero waste business, this is the enterprise to check out because they have a lot of ideas which you can copy. So what they do is come up with a lot of zero waste ideas and then just let people do them. They test them as well, so they know that they work. And then when people who are interested to do this, they can copy the business model. Salin and refillery are also your um, business stores that deliver and also sell products in refill. People are also invited to bring their own um, containers. It's and of course we have refillables. Hi, and we just listened a while ago to Roxanne discuss this, and they also have a very amazing story, as we know. And go back to basics is also a business by women who are involved in the environment, and of course because they are involved in the environment, they also made sure that their business is environmental friendly. And what's good about them is that when they work with suppliers, they check the suppliers. They want to see their environmental and labor practices as well. So as you can see, the zero waste enterprises that we have featured, their bottom line is profit. Of course, they are making profit, but most important for them is change. That's it, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharma, for sharing this. We only featured 21 stories, and we know that there are more stories out there. So hopefully, this report is just a start, and we'll get to hear more amazing stories in the future, whether those that are already starting now or those who will be inspired from hearing these examples. For our third guest, we go to Indonesia to hear about Toko Organis, another zero waste store featured in the report. We have with us today Victor Ferdinand, or Piki. He joined YPBB in 2009 and works in management system developments and various training and facilitation processes with communities and government officials. He has been providing research and design inputs for waste management systems in the cities of Bandung, Chimahi, and Soriang under YPBB Zero Waste Cities project. Furthermore, he has been providing support for the project's replication in other cities in Indonesia, together with the Indonesia Zero Waste Alliance. Piki, we're excited to hear about Toko Organis and what inspired you and YPBB to start it. What does Toko Organis mean as a starting point? And then tell us how it started.
Yeah, thank you, Troy and Gaia, for featuring us in the publication. Yeah. I really love the title, actually. Yeah, business unusual. So, toko organis in English means toko is Indonesian word or bahasa word for a store, and organis is an adaptation from organic. So, That's our main campaign in YPBB, Organic Lifestyles. Um, Throughout the year from 1993, YPDB has been campaigning and organizing and research and training people in zero waste. No, since 2005 actually. So over time, we developed our zero waste community. Uh, People who are within our zero waste community. So when you change your lifestyles, you will have new needs. For example, you might need to compose your kitchen waste at home, having new supporting tools like tumblers or lunchbox or cloth bag, and then the conversation start to happen about what's the safest and most affordable ways or technology to support these new lifestyles, the organic lifestyles. So that was when we came out with the idea of the organics. So um, so Toko Organics is actually a supporting system for our zero waste community. Then. Uh, and our refill start in 2018 when we realized that even if our zero waste cities program is successful, Bandung will still be left with around 30% of residual waste. And most of the residual waste are packaging and single-use plastics. So first, most of these packagings are residual waste, so the one that you cannot recycle. Actually. And learning from other initiatives, including from NVU, we met NVU staff in 2019, we start to research about refill and alternate delivery system. And we developed our first pilot refill center in Toko Organi. So we kind of like chip the new line in the Toko Organis. So uh, beside supporting the community, first with the tools that support their new lifestyles, and also the economy that grow around it. For example, we have our community members that produces home composters or making cloth bags or even local snack or food product, and they can also sell it in Toko Organics. And we also urge our customers to donate or bring their own or even return the containers that they use when they go shopping. Yeah, we call people to donate their containers at home. Uh, so our goal is not only to continue or to support our zero waste community, but also to inspire others to have their own business like this. We want to show people and government that these kind of businesses are thriving. For example, when we start the research in 2018, there's only a handful of refill centers or box stores in Indonesia. Now there are more and keep on growing. And the beauty of these refill centers is that they serve their local community around it. So there's very small competition going. And I think if we are to be serious about addressing the residual waste that choking our landfill and pollute our rivers and our ocean, and also at the same time to ramp up our small businesses after the pandemic, I think government can use these businesses as models. Instead of relying on the technology to destroy the residual waste and draining public money, governments can guide the producer to shift their delivery system, revive the local economy, and preventing waste in the first place. I think that's it from us, Roy. And let's have more conversation on the Q&A session.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, Piki. And it's amazing how the work of YPBB on building zero waste cities in Indonesia is being complemented by these efforts like Toko Organic. So thank you for that. Again, to invite those who are watching us live to type your questions in the comments section of our Facebook and YouTube live. We'll get to your questions later during the question and answer portion. No? So for now, let's go to Singapore for our third speaker to learn about BearPack. We have Roxanne Zuro, who is the CEO and co-founder of BearPack, a returnable container ecosystem in Singapore and France that enables zero-waste food delivery. Trained in textiles and product design, her passion for the outdoors and wildlife has brought her attention to the lack of sustainable options for food on the go that intrinsically shapes the most societies across the globe. And nowhere is that more true or noticeable than in Singapore, where she took a presidency in 2018. She also leads the Sustainable Fashion Modules in Singapore's Textile and Fashion Industry Training Center and is passionate about new material technologies. Roxanne, tell us more about BearPack. What's behind the name and how did it start?
Okay, quickly, we're behind the name. What's behind the name? So the idea was, how can we use the least packaging possible to carry the goods that we need or that we want to buy? And so that was the idea behind Bear Packaging, using the strict minimum and trying to avoid overconsumption of packaging in general. I thought I'd take a slightly personal approach to how I started BearPack. So I do have 3 other co-founders with me. And it all began really when when I moved here. So I've actually traveled quite a bit around the globe. I started off in France, which is where I'm native from. Then I moved to the UK. I lived back in France again. I had a stint in the US. I've been to Australia, had an episode in China, and then finally I moved to Singapore. And when I moved here in 2018, I had the pleasure of discovering many other countries in the area, but also in other continents, from Africa to Vietnam, India. So that was Tanzania specifically in Africa. I've been to Japan. And it came to my realization that in all these countries, there was a lot of plastic. And I'm a diver. I'm a horse rider. I'm a yoga long-time learner. And everywhere that I went, all the activities that I did, I noticed that there was plastic. And it's not that I hadn't noticed this back in Europe, don't get me wrong. In Europe, I grew up thinking, okay, I have something that's disposable, it's a plastic, it's a paper, it's a metal. And as far as I can remember, I've always had a sorting bin at home. So I would sort my plastics, sort my papers, and to me, that was the solution. Then it goes somewhere, gets recycled. I'm not even sure I was that aware even of what happened to it afterwards. I just knew that that's what you had to do. So as with many things that are intrinsic to like how our society works, how you've been taught to live, you don't question it so much. It's like brushing your teeth. You know you're meant to brush your teeth, you don't really do it. Or eating 3 times a day, you just do it. And it was very much the same for me and for recycling and sorting my materials. And having said that, around me, the cities were relatively well kept, not perfect, but I think I just didn't have as much awareness. As a reminder, I was working in the textile industry later on. And again, I don't think I was as conscious of the waste, probably because it wasn't in my face. It wasn't as visible to me or as shocking. But especially in 2018, as I traveled a fair bit, and I noticed that wildlife particularly, and this is what pained me, because in our cities, I can deal with that. I can deal with plastic on the floor, knowing that it's uncomfortable to me, but that's my problem as a human. What really hit me was when I noticed that it was a problem to the wildlife around me that didn't ask for any of this and whose instincts didn't tell them how to act around plastics. So whether it be monkeys looking for food residues inside plastic bags, or whether it be fish eating plastics, they don't eat it because they think it's a food. It just smells like food, or it's covered in algae, for example, so it has an appeal to be food. That was more troublesome to me. And when I hit Singapore in particular, I noticed how freely people used of plastic and how it felt like it was almost something that they were entitled to. And I joined an NGO here, a charity called Zero Waste Singapore, did some volunteering, realized through the workshops and talks that I did that not a lot of people had a very clear understanding of what plastic as a material was, or how to recycle materials, how to tell them apart. We even have a basic understanding of, well, what happens to recycling. There's a misconception that if something gets recycled in Singapore, it goes to a center where it gets transformed into a new plastic. That's not really true, because the majority of the plastics that do get sorted and eventually can go for recycling are just sorted here. Then they have to go somewhere else. And I think it was in 2017, early 2017 or 2018, China said no more importing of plastics, among many other materials, for recycling. And the world sort of froze. Well, what do we do with our materials? And you see, had I been in Europe at that time, I think I would have also started to notice only at that point that we had an issue, because until then, things were out of sight. But in Singapore, things were very much in my sight. I could see the recycling bins overflowing with materials that would never make it to recycling because they had food in them, for example. And here our sorting facilities don't accept items that have food in them because they're considered contaminants. I realized that despite a lot of education around this, people were still poorly recycling or not recycling, and it really ruined everyone else's efforts. And then beyond that, as I've mentioned, well, what happens to it? Where does it go? Who recycles it? It turns out that we've gotten worse and worse at our recycling numbers. We're at 4%, I think, last year. So we've lost 1 to 2% every year in Singapore. And just globally, plastics and many materials don't get recycled. So if you can't recycle your materials, if we can't bring them back into the economy, and we have to keep on using new materials, that on top of the fact that it does end up in the environment, it could be from intentional pollution, but it could most of the time be from mismanagement of waste. If you saw in my previous slide, there was a cow sorting through plastic on the floor, and that's just because that was a region in India that just didn't have waste management facilities. So for me, it really came down to, well, recycling wouldn't be a solution anyways, especially as we have a growing population, and it would require an enormous amount of resources to be recycling as much waste as we produce. The solution was really that we had to reduce and we had to reuse. Single use is a big problem globally. I've mentioned a few. One of them, ocean pollution, air pollution. Microplastics have become more and more at the forefront of discussions, as well as microfibers. And actually, most of the microplastics in the oceans are microfibers. They come from our clothes. Deforestation. We talk about plastic, but paper packaging is just as much of a problem if it's not from sustainable forestry. And even if it were from sustainable forestry, we can't imagine replacing all plastics with paper. We just don't have the resources for it. Fun fact, at the beginning, I think back in the early 80s, late 70s, when we started switching towards single-use plastics, one of the reasons was, well, it actually protects the environment. We're saving our forests by using plastic. So it's not just switching materials that is going to help. The same thing with, biodegradable plastics or bio-based plastics, which is not the subject of my talk, but that is also not a solution. It still provides a lot of waste generation, which is something we just don't have a quick fix for. And then, again, a topic for another time, chemical mobility and bioavailability of what you find in these plastics, because especially plastics, petroleum microplastics, they transport, chemicals and make them more available to organisms to consume, and then that goes up the food chain, etc. So it's a really complex problem, and we can't just be cleaning oceans. That's not an end-all solution. So since when, given all of these problems, since when did it become less weird to throw away rather than to reuse, was the question at the top of my mind when I moved here in Singapore and noticed it all around me. And it became really quickly obvious. You have to plan ahead. You have to carry all the stuff with you all the time. So for some things, that's not an issue. Carrying a small reusable bag, a cotton bag, rolling it up, putting it in my handbag, Not a big deal. I can carry that all day in my purse. Anybody could do it. You even get those really flat ones now that you could put in your back pocket if you're a guy. But then there was also, well, if I have my container and I have my cup, I can kind of manage that as long as my bag's not too small. But then, well, if there's nowhere to wash it and it doesn't close properly, or if it opens, if it spills. So that was a bit of an issue. And then it was just limiting. I mean, what if I forget it and I really feel like eating something or consuming something? Most of the time I was restricting myself, which is even more frustrating when everyone around you isn't and doesn't seem to mind the fact that they are consuming a lot of disposables all day long. And then finally, food delivery. So something that I hadn't done much in Australia or in any of the countries that I lived in prior, simply because it wasn't as much of a lifestyle thing as it is here in Singapore, where, you know, major food delivery platforms just go non-stop. I'll hit upon this later, but especially with COVID, I mean, we've seen an increase in food delivery, and that is also expanding overseas in Europe and such. So you can't use reusables for food delivery. I mean, you can't take your cup to a shop and say, hey, I'll order probably on Thursday. Can you hold it on for me and deliver it to me? So all these things made me think, okay, well, reuse is not convenient, and we need to fix all of these problems in order to encourage people to see the value of reuse. And then once they start using it, I think they become better adopters and advocates for sustainability because they are empowered with a solution. And that's how we came up with the Bearpack app. So what if you could have reuse on demand? So you don't have to plan ahead. Hands-free, it's not something you carry around with you. You just have your phone in your back pocket like you do for everything else. Wash-free, so without having to clean it, carry it with you for the rest of the day. And especially for delivery, it needs to be something that you can access for delivery at home or at the office when you need it. So how does Bearpack work? Very simply, you download an app. You have an inventory of a maximum number of containers that you can use. You can either use these for takeaway in a store. You'll walk into the store, scan a QR code, make a request for the number of reusables that you need. We supply that store, that restaurant, with our containers. You check them out. They'll provide the meal that you've ordered inside them. And then once you're done, you can return them anywhere. And this is really important because individual restaurants who have their own take-back programs or their consignment programs, especially in France, consignment is becoming a big thing. You still have to go back to a specific store, which is not very convenient for the majority of us. We've just become so used to not having any responsibility for the end products. So how do you minimize the weight of having to return something? Among those things that we made easier was that you don't have the responsibility per se of the item because they're on loan to you. So you don't have a specific attachment to them, and you can access them just when you need them. And the other thing I was going to say was, it's a membership. So we've seen a lot of models that use a per use fee system. And we've preferred a membership program because we feel that if you're charging people per use, then you're going to encourage people using it less. So the more and more they spend, the less and less they'll want to use the application. Whereas we want to encourage people to use it more and more to make more and more of an impact. And also to not have to think, how many times have I borrowed? And it's also deposit free with no specific return time. Again, because we don't want to dissuade people from making a good action. So the timeline roughly looks like this-ish. I moved here in 2018, mid-2018, and was overwhelmed by the amount of different plastics. I think the two that really stood out for me was the amount of bubble tea cups. I think I'd never seen so many brands in my life. And the other one and the little plastic holders that come around those coffee cups. I didn't really understand why we had them or why they were necessary. And then the copy bags. So that struck me the most because to me that was just unhealthy and unsafe. We know that disposable plastics aren't regulated as well as reusables that are sold as commodities to individuals. And I was just really concerned about, what are in these disposable plastics? What is this misconception that people have around cleanliness and around safety from single use? And then unlike rigid plastics, all these flimsy bags, they're the first ones to easily fly out of bins, end up in our waterways, pollute our oceans. So within two months, I was like, okay, I've got to do something. And I had been traveling during this period as well. And it just became obvious that it was not a local problem, as I've mentioned before. 2019, came up with a few ideas, rolled out a pilot, found 3 co-founders whom I stumbled upon at a zero waste conference. They actually sat next to me, and I started blabbering away with my ideas of, it doesn't take that much to change people's habits if you can make it convenient. And they were like, oh, that sounds like a great thing to do. Let's work on it together. We ran a pilot towards the end of 2019. Beginning of 2019, we did do a test with a different type of model with a corporate company. And then that validated a few of our beliefs, and it also showed us what we need to change. And so the pilot in December 2019 had about 30 restaurants, and that was like our test. And then we launched properly in January last year. And we had our first corporate customer, so PwC, who was our first office that we operated in order for them to be zero waste, so their employees could use reusables, make sure they didn't come back into the office, and reduce basically their single-use consumption. And then, as you all know, COVID hit, and we realized that that's okay. That's actually an opportunity for us to explore how else we need to approach the problem, and it sped up our interest in delivery, which we knew would be something we'd have to look into. Initially, we're just doing takeaway because it was easier and the most accessible thing to scale. But we realized we really needed delivery, especially with the amount of plastic that was just accumulating, and people were becoming really aware of it because it was accumulating in their homes as opposed to in their office as well. So in some ways that worked in our favor. We launched with all 3 major delivery platforms in Singapore, Foodpanda, Deliveroo, and GrabFood. And by December last year, we had over 130 partners. And then this year, 2021, we're adapting like everyone else to the new normal. We're focusing more on our deliveries and also exploring the work from home concept and how we can help people there. And recently we launched a program as well for tree planting in Indonesia, because we believe that solutions are not just isolated, they actually work in tandem. We need to implement many solutions in order to be able to create a sustainable lifestyle and societies and help each other mutually across borders. So Bearpack is not just about reuse. We understand that, like I said, we're one of the many blocks to solve the SDGs. These are the ones that we work on, specifically health, sustainable cities, life on water, life on land, and partnerships for the goals. You can scan the QR code at the bottom on the right if you want to download or discover the app. And otherwise, I'll be happy to share more with you in the questions that you leave me.
Thank you so much, Roxanne. It'd be good to visit Singapore soon and enjoy the great food culture without the guilt associated with using plastic that typically comes with it. But would love to hear more how it goes and the challenges with that later. For now, we have some interesting questions from the comments already. So we again are inviting everyone to please send your comments or questions on Facebook or YouTube, and we'll get through them later. But for now, we have a few starting questions for some of our speakers. Let's start with Allison and Vicky. Do you track how many pieces of plastics you have prevented from being used because of your initiatives? And if ever, do you have the numbers to share with us?
We do. Since day one, that's something that I've really wanted to implement here, because I just think to give a quantitative measure for people, it really lets them see what we're doing, like the impact that we're making. So in just over 2 years, it's been over 12,500 containers that we've diverted from landfill. And that ranges from, the containers could be a 30-liter containers, because all of our refillable products that we get from our suppliers for the home care, those are all reused and refilled and returned to us and returned back and forth. So we managed to divert those from landfill, but it can also be 100 ml bottles. It could be 5-liter bottles. So it's a very wide range of different sizing of containers, but it's been a substantial amount for such a small little town.
Thank you, Alison. Piki?
Yeah, we tracked the first 7 months when we opened the refill station, and we believe it's about 5,000 to 6,000 sachet, 40 milliliters of sachet. That's only the 7 to 8 months after we open our store refill center. Now we predict it's about around 10,000 sachet per year, but it's down in 2019 because of the pandemic. So we had our store closed for about 2 months, not operating, and then after that.
Uh, Thank you, Piki. The next question is maybe for Roxanne and Allison. Some say that people would not be willing to give up the convenience that plastics provide, and this will result in less people supporting zero waste stores or other plastic free initiatives. Do you agree with this, and how was your experience? Roxanne.
Yes, so I think that was the reason behind all of the changes we've made at Bearpack, is that you can't expect people to change their habits if they don't feel like they benefit from it straight away. It's just mankind, it's human nature. Most people are going to be looking at what works for them at that time specifically. I'll take basic case scenarios because I live in a very business orientated city and country. If you're looking at some working professionals that have a lot of concerns on their mind, they have a stressful amount of workload, they have family at home, they have child duties, they have, wife duties, etc. To be very honest, unless they feel like it's impacting their health directly or it's impacting their social status, that is something that we are seeing increasingly. So that could be a new pressure that is good. I mean, it's quite hard to expect people to just make a change. And I've noticed that those who do make a change are those who have felt affected straight away, or who feel like their peers are, not really approving of their behavior. And so you still want to fit in. Peer pressure is a really big thing. If everyone around you is bringing their own cups, and we saw this in Australia overnight, for example, everybody had a keep cup, like literally overnight. And forgetting your keep cup and using a disposable, people wouldn't necessarily say something. They'd look at you like, So I would say convenience is a very hard thing to forego unless you have other reasons to forego.
Thank you, Roxanne. Allison, from your experience, how was it?
From day one, essentially, one of the main objectives with my particular refill shop is targeting people that are in the middle to lower financial demographic, because I think it's super important to be including them in the conversation. And a lot of zero waste and minimal waste shops do target people from a higher financial demographic. So for us here at Refillables Hoi An, one of the main objectives has always been to provide affordable refillable products. I'd rather have to sell more to make the profit than to sell less at a higher profit. My rationalization again being that, I really don't care if the people are coming in because it's cheap. I just want to get you in the door, buy the products, and then we can have a conversation about why it's better, why reusing the plastics are better. Our products are all eco-friendly, so that was the other side of things. So that's really been the way that I've tried to target, is looking at finance, because the simple reality is that people in that demographic, that's what their focus is trying to make their dollars stretch a lot further. And so I want to make sure that this is affordable. And a lot of people come in and they're shocked at the prices that we're charging. And a lot of people will tell us that we should be putting our prices up. But like I said, we're doing exceptionally well, and I'm really proud of what we've managed to accomplish here in a community that didn't know anything about refilling, prior to me bringing it here, and from what the expat community knew. So, and people are in demand. People are wanting it all over Vietnam, and it's starting to pop up all over Vietnam. But I regularly get people coming in that are visiting from Hanoi or Saigon, and they're just like, please, please, please open one in Hanoi. Please open one in Saigon. Like people want it here. So it's happening.
Thank you for that, Allison. And one comment in our private chat mentioned that a lot of these zero waste stores started implementing in 2018. And as one of you mentioned, great minds think alike. I think hopefully we'll be able to inspire more great minds to follow in your footsteps. Next question for Sharma. Of all the 21 stories featured in the report, aside from refilling and packaging free delivery, what other unique models you have discovered that really interests you?
Yeah, so there are a lot actually. Their stories are compelling. But if I have to name a few, I think it would have to be one would be Sharesa. It's because it's holistic, like I said before, and they're actually working with the community and indigenous peoples, and they're making sure that their whole operation is zero waste from the agricultural practices until the selling of the product. That's one thing. Also, the app-based bring me back in Australia is one thing also, uh, because of how they tackle food waste. And as we know, food waste is also a big problem. And they are showing that you don't really have to bin all those food that are excess. At the end of the day, you can actually find buyers for them and sell them at discounted product prices. But you have to have an app or you have to have a system, and that's what Bring Me Home Australia has done. I think also the enterprise and view. I think what I love about them is that they are really making these models that other business oriented people can copy and can try also in their context, and they're very generous to do that. And I think I'd like to work in that kind of environment actually, where you can think about different ways of doing and then test them, and when they do work, you can just tell people that, hey, you can use this, and it's something, and you're making change in the community as well. So there's a lot, but these are the top three that comes to mind right now. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Sharma. I think the only downside from what you've mentioned and from what Allison mentioned, Allison, someone from the Gaia team is already interested to apply for a post in Vietnam, just so they could probably work there. So I'm not very excited about that. So let's see, But I think that the interest in all of this is really amazing. Now let's go to some of the questions that were asked by our audience on the live stream. So the first question is for Piki and for Alison, maybe. As zero waste stores, did you need to apply for a special permit that allowed you to engage in a refill business in Indonesia and Vietnam? Similar to here in the Philippines, this has been a question for the zero waste stores where it is regulated by the Food and Drug Authority because it is a refilling business. In your case, was that the same? Alison.
Sorry. We've been pretty fortunate because here in Vietnam, there's already a refill concept in terms of the small shops that happen, right? Like they're already doing refills of rice and refills of sugar, and a lot of that happens in the smaller shops. So as it grows, like we would love to start looking at doing things that incorporate refrigable, like or cold foods, but that's going to take a lot more, right? Things with these larger or shorter expiration dates, in terms of products, like the suppliers, they also need to get the authority to produce in larger containers. They can't just suddenly start filling up 30-liter containers. They actually have to apply for the permits to allow them to fill those quantities. So it's a little bit on both ends, but it's been fairly loose so far. And I think because it is a new concept and it does fall within the smaller businesses that are already happening within the government, within the country. But I think we will start seeing some changes depending on how the concept continues to develop and grow.
Thank you, Alison. Piki, in Indonesia, did Toko Organs apply for any special permit?
No, I think it's the same situation also with Vietnam. Yeah, it also falls into a small business, and traditionally, actually, we have a kind of refill store in our traditional market. I remember when I was a kid, we always buy cooking oil in refill instead of pouch like now. So yeah, there's no special permit, I think. But again, it changes. Probably in the near future, things will change.
Thank you, Piki. For our next question, this is for Roxanne. How did you encourage businesses to use your innovation? Do they get an incentive every time a customer will buy via Bear Pack? So I think this is for the restaurant. And also, you partnered with both the three big delivery platforms in Singapore. How were you able to get them?
So, with regards to incentives, now this was something that we discussed internally quite a lot, and we had to review it. We're constantly reviewing what the best approach is. Currently, restaurants don't have any extra incentive. I mean, it's the other way around in a way. We provide them with reusable containers for free, completely free. The restaurants can sign up, we deliver them boxes, and then they can almost immediately implement Bear Pack. So if anything, they have free marketing, they have a new free channel, a new way of communicating, a real sustainable solution that they can provide their customers with who forget to bring their own every now and then. They have like a new kind of approach. It creates loyalty as well. New customers can discover them through the Bear Pack app. So when you open the app, you see all of the Bear Pack locations. So when you want to return, you can go to any of these locations. So you're more likely to go to a restaurant that you've never been before, just because you know that they accept your containers. And we know that once someone is in a place where they can make a purchase, they're more likely to actually have a browse or have a look around. And unconsciously, they register this business in their head. So they might come back to it later. And then, on top of that, they could make savings if they are considerably spending on so-called eco-friendly disposables. I mean, they're still disposables. So for me, that's still waste. And that is a whole mentality, is that no packaging or reusable packaging is better than any kind of eco-friendly packaging that is disposable. So some restaurants that we've talked to, they spend up to $1, $1.50 per packaging. That is huge compared to the usual 10 cents that they would pay for a typical plastic before. And some businesses are willing to do that and to not put that cost onto the customer. But I mean, it takes a lot to do that. And we do find that is actually more likely to happen with smaller businesses, ironically, because I guess when they put numbers in their, in their Excel sheet, it doesn't make as big a jump as if you've got 16 chains across the country and they're all shifting from 10-cent packaging to $2 packaging. So if anything, they make cost reductions, they get free marketing, they also get sustainability resources. Like, we actively try and educate and help the restaurants that we work with how they can improve. We happy to connect them with other local initiatives on encouraging people to bring their own bottles, on how to communicate with your customers in a way that is not greenwashing. I think that's really important as well. And then, so encouraging them, I think it's not too hard, and they do see that there is a consumer demand. Like we've been told repeatedly that one of the top complaints is packaging, which is funny because I mean you're the customer, so if you just don't want the packaging, don't shop there. But people are still asking for delivery, and then they're complaining that the packaging is disposable, or that there's too much of it. And so they're like, okay, well, we don't have a solution to that except for Bearpack. So in a way, it's like, well, sure, don't join, but how do you solve your customer issues? And then the other question was the second question.
The delivery platforms. How are you able to
get them? So we started off with doing deliveries kind of on a pilot for an event. I think it's important to reassure these big platforms that your solution works. You can't expect them to change all of their system or their logistics for you overnight. So it's not that easy. Again, they have the same incentives as the restaurants in that they want to provide better packaging for their users. Don't think that they don't care. They do. It's just that as a business model, this is how they were built. So how do you unbuild something that you've worked so hard to construct to a point that it works so well that people find it hard to give up? So what made it easier, obviously, was once one platform joined, the other platform saw it as sort of, social proof, which is true for many businesses and business models. And then it was easier to have conversations with them. Also, we could, trial what works, what doesn't work. And so those who join later get some of the benefits of that. But at the same time, those that worked with us right at the beginning, we genuinely really appreciate that they took this leap of faith in trying something so completely different. They have no real financial benefit on their side to be doing this specifically, beyond attracting more customers who would be interested in using zero waste platforms, because there aren't many out there. So working with these platforms is a huge achievement. Worldwide, we're actually the first company to have all major platforms, and in the same year to offer our service with the partnering restaurants. I think it's a big message. It shows that this is how it will go forwards. But yes, it does take a lot of discussions, a lot of time, and a lot of understanding, like what are their issues? What are their concerns? How can we address those concerns? How can we reassure them? How can we help them communicate the right messages with their customers as well on the initiatives that they're making? So yeah, I wouldn't say it was easy, but it was probably one of the most rewarding things that we've done in 2020.
Thank you, Roxanne. Our next question is for Allison. How was your experience with connecting with and looking for suppliers that were willing to provide their products in bulk?
It was definitely an interesting experience because when I started out, I didn't have support, Vietnamese support. So it was me, and I don't speak Vietnamese, and Vietnamese is not even remotely like English. So I was very blessed that I actually was using a couple of products in my house already that were eco-friendly, because that was something that was important to me, and that were made in Vietnam. So immediately, I found contact information for them. And then in general, just started researching using Google Translate for words of products that I was looking for, and then I would take the Vietnamese Google translated word, put it into the search engine, go into the images, click on the images, and just like look through this wormhole trying to find products. And then I would make just a massive list of products that I felt promising to me, I held interest in what I want for the store. If I could email them, I would email them and hope that they could do translation for me. They could use Google Translate. And then about 2 or 3 months in, I managed to get a Vietnamese assistant. And I had her, for any of them that didn't have an email, I had her start calling around and inquiring. And there was definitely some brands that I thought for sure would want to be on top, like they're already eco-friendly with the products that they're supplying. So I figured this would be the next step. Like, how could they not want to, you know, be involved in this? But as I had mentioned earlier, because of the logistics, because of the need to get the proper documentation from the government for that specific packaging, like it doesn't, you know, the packaging information for a 500 mil can't translate to 5 liters. It can't translate to 1 liter. Like they need to have specific packaging information and apply for that for all these different sizes. So it really, you know, it was really just keep pushing and hoping that someone was going to understand what I wanted to achieve and what I wanted to do. And I was very fortunate that one of my first suppliers that's located very close to Hoi An in Da Nang, Min Home, they were amazing, and they do an enzyme-based product, and they understood what I wanted to do. They understood what my goals were, and they were very open with wanting to work with me and make it happen. And then another brand, they did the same thing. You know, they came on board without, you know, much back and forth about why. I think they really did it. They wanted to do it more for finance, but I was like, that's okay. Again, like let's just do it. Let's just give me those 30-liter containers. And then, you know, because for every 30-liter container, depending on the quantity you're dispensing, you know, like with the hand soap, a 30-liter container on average would fill like about 60 500 mil containers. You know, so that's a massive amount. So I find that it's still touch and go with some companies and trying to get them on board, but more and more are starting to see what's happening and are really open to it.
Thank you so much, Allison. The next question is for all of you, but I'd like to address this first to Picky. In your view, what are the things needed to change corporate behaviors in producing single-use plastics, wasteful business models? So amazing initiatives like what you are doing can scale up faster as the mainstream business model. What needs to be done by the corporates? We're having technical issues with Picky. Allison, do you have any insights in terms of what could the corporates do to support the scaling up of your business model?
We did it again. The thing is that they need to see the benefit for themselves, right? That's part of the challenge is they need to see the benefit. I'm now partnering with a new company called Refill Day, and we're aiming to bring refill concept to more Vietnamese communities in small neighborhoods. And we have been in talks with Unilever, and that's a brand that, you know, so many communities use, like Sunlight, and they are trepidatious about this, you know, because like I said, it's about them having changed things in order to fill these big containers. So they're giving us a window of time, a few months to test it out so that we can prove to them that this is going to be a good thing. And that's just it. It's like, you know, it's proving to these organizations that it can be beneficial to them. It can be very beneficial to them and beneficial to the world and to the environment. But it's just testing the waters and having them take the patience to test the waters with us to make it work, right?
Thank you, Allison. We're about to end today's session, so I'd like to thank you all, our speakers, for joining us and for sharing your work. This has been a very inspiring discussion. We all learned a lot from you, and we wish you continued success. In wrapping up, may we request you to give final words. What would you say to ordinary folks out there who might be either exploring, supporting things that you are doing, or might be interested to start something similar as well? What would be your message for them? And maybe share as well your next plans for your future plans for your own businesses. Roxanne, can I start with you?
Sure. So mine would be, don't underestimate the impact that you can have. There are many examples. I mean, we're all examples. Alison just mentioned, she started without speaking the language locally. You can all have an impact. And even if you feel like you don't want to start your own thing, your voice in itself is an impact. So if you go to a business and say, hey, I want a reusable solution, you say it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times. I mean, they hear it. And eventually it helps businesses like us convince them to join and to take this leap, into a new sort of model. So I would say use your voice to communicate, share with others, share with your peers. Don't preach, but just by showing what you do and being, vocal and open about what you do, you can inspire others to start as well. Just don't go criticizing how people are doing. That doesn't really work. Just lead by example, right? And people find you inspiring, hopefully, and then they join you on your journey. And then our project, so we actually also launched in France. We launched in France. We did a Kickstarter at the end of last year, and we're now live in France and Paris. And we will be exploring new cities as well. So yeah, and always listening to what people need and to how we can make the service better for them, because at the end of the day, you are a service to other people. And yeah, we keep building. We're very flexible in that way, because that's the only way we can build something that's going to work and be sustainable long term.
Thank you, Roxanne. Alison, final words from you?
Yeah, I would have to say it's the same with all the things that Roxanne said. And I think it's just have faith in yourself. We're all really capable of doing so much more than we give ourselves credit for. And I can tell you, never in a million years would I have imagined that I would be living in Vietnam, having opened up a refill shop, and having the success with it that I have. And I feel truly blessed with that. And I feel blessed with the people that have listened to my story and have used it as inspiration. I have a friend who lives down in Mexico, and she's opened up a refill. Now she's got 2 refill shops based on what I've done here, called Agranel. And I just think it's amazing, right? You just take that chance. The worst case scenario is that if you take that leap and it doesn't work out, you just take that step back to where you were prior to it. And as Roxanne pointed out, listening, like, don't just be the voice, but listen to what people are asking for and embrace that, because that's how, like with Refillables Hoi An, we've really tried to grow organically and just listen to the needs of the community. And, when people are asking us to originally open in Da Nang, and I was like, I'm not ready for that, but somebody will open there. Now there's 3 shops that are in Da Nang offering refills, and they've based it off of what we've done here, and that's just it. There are a lot of other shops that just listen to what your community wants and step in and do what you can to make it happen.
Thank you, Alison. Sharma, what's your greatest takeaway in putting the various stories together, and what's our next step? Are we going to have a volume 2, considering there are more stories out there?
Yeah, I'm so interested in having another volume. I mean, I wasn't so keen on doing this the first time, but now I am. I've seen a lot of models. I've seen a lot of things from the entrepreneurs that we interviewed, and we are now realizing that there are still a lot of businesses out there that we haven't even talked to, and we haven't featured. And they also have a new models to show, and also space in this conversation. So we would want to have them to give them the space as well. One of the 2 things that I learned from putting these things together is that one, while capital is very important when you are starting a zero waste business, it's not really the best or the most important thing. It's actually the passion and the willingness and the desire to make change, because this passion, this desire is what's going to dictate the operations of your corporation or your business, what the direction you'll be taking. And also lastly, I think another thing that's important is understanding the problem. We have listened to 3 of our speakers, and they demonstrated how much they understood the problem. And when you understand the problem, you can come up with solutions that are systematic, because you see that the problem is complex and requires systematic change and behavior change as well. So I think these are the 2 things that I learned from them. Among all the other things that I learned a lot. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharma. Vicky, Any final words, and how can people support businesses like Toco Organics?
Yeah. Also answering your previous question, what we like to do is to inspire people and helping people to build their own organic store, like the one we have, but in their respective community, because what we see is that it really work with the community, and in that way also we can show to the government and to the businesses, the FMCGs that we're trying to shift their business into, that this kind of this new store change or economic change is also viable, and they can also work with us, and hopefully the government also support this kind of system, um, to um, push the FMCGs to shift their way of delivering their product, so that it will be less or no waste at all. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Picky. And once again, thank you, Sharma, Alison, Picky, and Roxanne for sharing your stories. And our thanks to you and everyone in your team for all the work you are doing. To all our viewers, thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to visit our websites, no-burn.org and zerowasteworld.org. And please check out our social media pages, Gaia Asia Pacific on Facebook, and Zero Waste Asia on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube for previous versions of Learn by the Nuggets. We're also present in other social media platforms posted here on the ticker. And if you think people could benefit from watching this video, we do invite you to share this video. Remember, let's keep learning something new every day, and see you on the next episode of Learn by the Nuggets. Thank you all. Have a good afternoon.